Right, hello there. Thank you so much for joining us right here on this CNBC Africa special. I'm Eugene. Anangwe. We're going to be having a very, very nice conversation as regarding to the audiovisual industry. The future of this particular sector is what we want to shine a spotlight on. Feel free to be a part of the conversation at CNBC Africa, or you can tweet me directly at Eugene. Anangwe. Let me bring on board our panelists right here. Scott, who's actually a European news editor, the Hollywood reporter. Thank you so much for making time to join us right here.
Anytime.
Also not new to CNBC is Eric Kawera, founder Kwetu Film Institute, and of course also hailed for actually being a part of those who created what we call now Hollywood. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Nice being here.
And of course we are honored to have Mickey, Hollywood star. Thank you for joining us, Mickey. All right, and also with us is none other than Ramadan Suleiman, director and writer, plus of course a producer behind Natives at Large. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Nice to be here.
Let's get things started. In Rwanda, there has been an audiovisual forum, the first of its kind. And I want to start, let me start first home. They always say, east or west, home is best. Let me start with Eric here. Eric, the first of its kind. In so many years, we're having an audiovisual forum. First of all, some people will be wondering, is the film industry, is the audiovisual industry being taken seriously? All these years we've had so many conferences on trade, so many conferences on other issues, but the audiovisual industry, this is the first time we're having this. Let me read your thoughts on that.
I think it's an extraordinary day. It's actually an important milestone, and I'm actually humbled to say that actually this particular discussion started right in my office, where I had two gentlemen from Germany, and based on all the efforts that we've been doing for the past 20 years, we would say that the Rwanda film industry has been existing for the last 24 years, because ever since the stopping of the Rwandan genocide against the Tutsi, you found BBC, NBC, New York Times, all the major media networks came to Rwanda to record the aftermath. And what happened is they did a lot of documentaries, and then what followed, I learned the trade, produced the first feature film on the genocide on that. Then what followed was Hotel Rwanda, sometimes in April. More than 20 feature films and more than maybe 50 documentaries have been made. And I became like the symbol of the guy who goes to every single minister, including to His Excellency the President Kagame, went to him and said, can you come to Tribeca with us? And he graciously accepted. So himself has actually been a fervent and supporter of the Rwandan film industry in a sense. But actually on the policy level, this is a milestone, and I hope a resolution will come out of this to actually make sure that things can happen, because many young filmmakers have been trained, and you saw them in the room. They're very enthusiastic, they're very thirsty to continue making films, but they want to make it as a business. Because if you just do it as a cultural aspect of things, they learn the trade. We've been training them for the last 15 years at the Kwetu Film Institute and the Rwanda Cinema Center. And then if there's no jobs,
some people would
they
argue,
hate me.
Yeah, some people would argue, Eric can tell you, some people would want to choose to look at it as a glass half full, while others say this is a glass half empty. But taking all this time, despite all those efforts that you talk about, that you had to go through to put people together, do you think the film industry has been that particular industry where people now today say, okay, now let's give them a chance? They've been on our neck, on our case all this time.
Let me chip in.
Yes.
We tend to make a similar mistake in South Africa.
Right.
We are an industry now almost because of the Americans, of the service industry, where Hollywood comes into South Africa in a mass scale. So the revenue streams is quite high. But I think it would be fair to say that in Rwanda at the moment, we do not have a film industry.
I totally agree with that.
Because you do not employ, 4,000, 5,000? Right? So let's say that this impetus in organizing the Kigali Audiovisual Forum is an impetus to a film industry.
To creation of that film industry.
Yes.
And I would say as well, to pick up on what Ramana was just saying, this is my first time in Rwanda. I had no idea what to expect. And I've done a lot of these forums in a lot of different countries. I've never seen such energy and excitement in the room. So many young people who are just dying to find out about the film industry, find out how to do it, get organized. That is what I think you speak to the glass half full, glass half empty. That for me is really overflowing glass. There's a lot of issues, and we'll probably talk about those. A lot of difficulties lie ahead. But that energy alone, that asset, which I guess is the Rwandan people, the Rwandan youth, that you can't duplicate and you can't buy. That's there. That was in the room the last 2 days, and that makes me really, really excited about the future of this industry here.
Right. Of course, it's very interesting, Mickey. I want to bring you in on this because Eric here humbly subdues and says we do not have a film industry. But probably some Rwandans who've been watching some of the local productions have been here feel that no, we do have. It's not fair to say that we do not have an industry. At least we do have some. Talk to us a bit about how Hollywood was actually nurtured, was actually grown to where it is today. What sort of steps you think Rwanda, that now Eric has accepted here that we don't have a film industry, what sort of lessons do you think we can borrow to grow our own industries here?
Thank you, and yes, Mickey Gooch here. To the great people of Rwanda, I would like to say thanks for having me. And I personally, when you say like how did the industry of Hollywood grow, one of the things that I know, I'm not exactly sure how Hollywood became Hollywood, but I do know that, and my numbers might be off here, but I know that a high volume, and we're talking high 80 to 90% of independent films that are made on a macro to even small micro independent budget of $1 million to $7 million in the independent space. All of those films, the deals and the handshakes and the paperwork are all done in Los Angeles, but they're all filmed outside. Because in LA, they've slashed all the tax incentives and all the filmmakers have now gone elsewhere to find where they can film. And so one of the discussions I always hear, I hear a lot of pitches, being a film producer that has a track record of doing a lot of different projects, and I hear a lot of different people, pitching projects. And one of the things that always comes up is, oh, well, we're going to film here because there's a tax incentive, or we're going to film here because there's a tax incentive. We're going to go to South Africa because of the tax incentive. So I think that is the answer in a lot of respect of bringing in commercial film, bringing in an industry. And then, yes, on the other hand, we have the fact that there is what industry are we bringing them to is what my friend over here is saying.
Let me bring in Suleiman, because you mentioned earlier on about South Africa, and of course we've heard about the growth of South Africa in different spheres. Let's get film now and the audiovisual industry, to be specific. The components that we need. We've had on the need for tax incentives, tax breaks, and all that as part of the building blocks in building this industry. What else do you think is needed here that has been lacking for all this time?
Well, it's a two-way. Either you talk of a half glass, half full, or half empty. But it's about the half. And you have the one half, which is the filmmakers, who have to do their part. Meaning they have to make sure that the training is done. Some of them have got to go to universities. Some of them have to have this passion of writing scripts. The government can't do it for them, so it comes from the individuals themselves. A writer cannot be forced by government to write. So we do require a huge number of passionate young people. When they sit in front of their computers, they must be writing serious stuff. So you need that culture of individuals. Then on the other hand, you need the government to be creating an enabling environment so that it can make it easier for young people to make films. It's a relationship. Between government and the filmmakers themselves. Filmmakers, first and foremost, need to get organized. Filmmakers must speak with one voice. You cannot be having 10, 15 filmmakers all expecting to have a meeting with the president. No. You need an organization that goes to the president that speaks on behalf of everyone.
Don't you think, and I believe that a lot of the studio systems and different conglomerates, Universal Studios, Fox Studios, that they would come, if there was an incentive, they would build their own infrastructures around it. They would put money into building a studio. They would have to, because if they're going to be filming, it's the plan.
That's not their business. Their business is to finding an opportunity somewhere where there is. I was in LA 2-3 weeks ago at AFM, where we met Sony, Disney, and Universal, you name it. It's simple for them. Can we come to South Africa? You guys have the infrastructure. We trust you. You have the incentives. You have the technicians. Coming to South Africa in terms of the airport, everything, it works. But they are not there to be building studios.
Right.
You build the studios. You create the infrastructure. We come with the dollars. We do what we want, and we pull out. Now, you are making the studios, build studios. That's not their business. Their business is to be making movies.
After you've built that infrastructure.
You build the infrastructure.
And also have the infrastructure, I would include in infrastructure also a talent pool that they can draw on in terms of technicians, in terms of even into craftspeople, whatever, that they can say we can bring our productions in and we know we're going to be taken care of. We know that we can do the operations. It's absolutely true what Mickey says. Tax incentives are a huge boom for foreign productions to come in. South Africa is a great example of that. But South Africa's also made some mistakes that probably Rwanda shouldn't repeat, in that they did not and have not really effectively grown their local industry, so that, I mean, what percentage of the box office goes to South African films? 3%? It's quite tiny, isn't it? 5%? It's
about 7 to 9.
7 to 9, okay, but it's still very, very
It's still
small.
very little.
Very small, given the fact that it's a heavily supported industry. The government gives a lot of money to the industry. They haven't managed to build up a local industry to support itself, and that's the real success stories that we see around the world. A lot of countries quite small, much smaller than Rwanda, have done it, combining an incentive to bring in big productions that can bring in a lot of money and expertise, while still protecting and growing their own local industry by believing their own local talent, supporting it, and on the government side, creating the infrastructure, creating the financial incentives, protecting their industry so that it can actually flourish and grow.
Let me give you, sorry, just to complete on the mistakes that you in Rwanda need not make with regard to South Africa. You're right when you say the government has created an enabling environment to a point where they helped to create an organization whose task was take charge of local industry and including policy. Unfortunately, we were affected by the famous word corruption, right? 2 days ago, I received a WhatsApp message of a report, which was a forensic report on the organization that the government gives money to look after the local film industry, and you hear stories of corruption.
But Eric has even come in. I want to just pick up on those points that have been mentioned, that Rwanda seems to be doing so well in terms of wanting to attract investors. One, the issue of corruption. When it comes to Transparency International, when we're rankings, Rwanda is ranked as one of the least corrupt countries in the world. Security, it's really amazing. All these components that probably you might need to attract investment. But why aren't we seeing those investments coming in the film industry?
I think one thing, I'll start from where Ramadan stated about getting African filmmakers organized and putting their efforts together so that they can meet the relevant ministers and the relevant authorities, including the president. I think I disagree with that. I disagree because in most African countries, they always governments will say yeah, you guys are not organized. I mean, artists have a lot of egos. They have a lot of egos. They have their own projects. They go to bed with their projects and things like that. So I think it's high time for us to say who is playing the best game out there? Who can we actually root for?
But talk to us about the gaps that are there in actually attracting the real investment that you need as a filmmaker here in Rwanda for you to actually build your Hollywood to the level that outdoes even the Hollywood that we have today.
I'll go back again to what Ramadan said in terms of the South African experiences. Of course, the government put in a lot of incentives, the tax rebates, and created that conducive industry for the foreign producers. And what normally happens, you get all the local guys getting frustrated because all these guys come and shoot and go. And once you go to all the cinemas, some of the stories that come out, they're not very representative of like the story of South Africa. I mean, I was a few years ago, I was in South Africa, and then the guy in the cinema said, like, "That's not my story, man. That's not my story. I did not tell you to tell my story."
Yeah.
And you can see that can happen once you actually give a window to somebody to come and tell your story because he has got the money, the infrastructure, because you want the money.
Can I add to that? Because I completely agree, and this is sort of my point saying, don't make mistakes that South Africa's made, other countries have made, of just opening up your market completely to the outside. Hollywood can provide a lot in terms of money, in terms of expertise, but they're not in it for you. They're in it for them, and you should be very clear about that. Right. To build a local industry here, I think, though, you do need to have some structures that allow people to actually make it a business.
Let's talk about those structures. Yeah. Which ones?
Well, for example, I mean, you'd say there are people who are making stuff, maybe there are some local stars. It's incredibly difficult, that was people were saying there, to make a living in the film industry. Almost impossible. So you need some way, structures like cinemas. I mean, how many cinemas are there in Rwanda? Literally a handful, right? I mean, so you can't show a film in theaters and get money out of it because there aren't any theaters. There are ways to get around that. There are technical solutions. We were looking at some of them, small, high-tech theaters that are transportable or whatever. Lots of different ideas there. Online. Nobody can make money online with one product at the moment. Maybe there's technical solutions there. Maybe the government can help by laws to give proper copyright to people who create it so they can have, when they make a film of quality, they can exploit it. They can get the money back. That's vital, because if you don't have that, the industry will never develop. Right. You might have individual films that pop up. Maybe somebody will come up from outside, give you some money. Great, but it will not be an industry.
Right. But collaboration, I think, is very, very key, and that's why people like Mickey and other people that we need to interact with, they come with their expertise, their exposure, their dynamic of doing things, and then you bring in, because if I tell Mickey to go and write, it's for me a script about Nyamirambo and the hustle and bustle that we go through, he won't get it, but he need to get some of that baseline, and then you go okay, what sells that? How can this be a universal story? And then you make it. If I become successful, I'll employ other people who are successful, and then they can aspire to do it. I mean, I'm a bit of the culprit. I feel like I talked so much about it. I excited everybody, make a film school, make a production house, become a filmmaker, and then at the end, it was literally at the verge of being hated. But once you have the collaborations and partnerships, I think
so
that's
these partnerships are the ones that actually.
I think that will help. That will help on a business level. I don't want the partnership of the NGOs kind of type of thing, as Christian, one of the former students, talked about.
I agree. Well, you mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
Film is business.
Yeah.
People want their money back. And I think at some point, Rwanda will need to find the small business people in Rwanda who would invest in Rwandan films to put pressure on the filmmaker to make the movie to pay back
the investment.
Because by so doing, this filmmaker cannot sit back and expect that I've made my movie. If it doesn't make box office, it's not my problem. There needs to be some kind of responsibility. Others are doing it.
Right.
We also have to start, because at some point, like in South Africa, it's taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
It's taxpayers' money. They are investing in your movie. So I think it is a right, as Ramadan Suleiman, to make sure that I pay back the taxpayers' money. It's the same principle.
It's as simple as that. Let's bring in Mickey, because we've spoken about the issue, and let's try sort of move this conversation beyond just Rwanda and probably make it as a continental level. There have been some complaints, and of course, Eric has alluded to that. Of course, we also had Scott talking about it. The issue of identity relating to some of these films, this movie, so that we can have a buy-in as Africans, for example, because there are so many movies that have been made about African heroes, the Nelson Mandelas, maybe Idi Amin is known in other ways, but he's a historical pillar on the continent. But when you see the people acting those roles, they are mostly not Africans. And so probably you find some Africans saying that, this is not my story, as Eric was saying. So how does it work so that we can be able to probably get the gist of it from the inside of all the affairs and how these movies are cooked to the point that we have these people acting these roles that Africans don't identify?
Well, one solution to that, which is implemented with a lot of these tax incentive countries and states, even in the United States, different states, which I think are a good representation of a small country. A state like Georgia with Atlanta and their booming film industry, they have rules implemented into these tax incentives that you need to hire local talent, or you don't get your tax credit. Wow. So it forces filmmakers, producers, to have an X amount of, you can basically juggle it where you can put one, say, movie star that's not from the local talent because you need that movie star to be able to hit your pre-sales, but then every supporting actor next to that movie star is from the local area, which I think would, drive more schools to be here, more film and entertainment to be here.
The local talent, because then they get that type of exposure, especially through big films. That's a model that's used across Europe, where you have to meet certain cultural criteria in order to get funding or to get tax breaks, and it can be stars. It can also be things like the story has to have local relevance, or it has to be from a local talent has written it, or whatever. And those things are very important. I think it's absolutely
Be very
key.
specific with it.
Yeah, you can be incredibly specific. Say,
So their hands are tied. It's not that they just don't want to have someone like Suleiman acting as Nelson Mandela because there's some resemblance right there. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure you would have done the accent better than Morgan Freeman did.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So tell me your thoughts on this. How does it make you feel as a producer, filmmaker?
I don't have a problem personally, simply because everyone has a right to make the story using their money. If us South Africans do not see the importance of our heroes, then why do you want to blame the Americans for taking the initiative and finding the money to make the stories? It is normal. They are making business out of our heroes. So it is our duty. Nothing stops us from making those stories as well, right? So that is if there are 10 movies on Mandela and there's 5 from South Africa, made by South Africans, why not? I'll give you a beautiful example.
Yeah.
Gandhi. Who made Gandhi? It was the British, Attenborough. India, with a huge history of Bollywood.
Yeah.
How many movies do they make per year? And no Indian filmmaker has ever made Gandhi. That's something to think about, isn't it?
Something to ponder about.
Yeah.
Eric, it's a challenge. You are a filmmaker yourself. And of course, we've had these complaints, and of course, Suleiman brings it really well, that it is them, it is their money. They are making a lot of money out of our own African heroes. And in this forum, you are talking about creating content from Africa that can be exported internationally. What is wrong with us? What's going on?
I think it's a universal issue whereby no one is a prophet on his own land until you get somebody to celebrate you or to tell you how great Mandela was, how great Gandhi was. And that's actually an irony. I've never thought about it. And actually bringing it back to the Rwandan experience, the outcry that Hotel Rwanda created, because once we finished making 100 Days, we took it to Toronto. I was approached by a couple of producers. I mean, it was in the Hollywood Reporter and Variety magazine. It was docudrama filmmaking at its finest. Really great reviews. Then it gave the appetite for other people to say, hey, we can actually make a film about this place, the historical background, because you have to remember, to make a great film is like a great landscape, great history, brutality and love, Those are the things that we exploited into 100 Days. And that's actually the very story that was exploited as well into Hotel Rwanda. But the way how it was presented, the guys home, they said, this is not a hero. We know where the heroes are. We know where the RPA were, the Rwandese Patriotic Army. These are the people that we need to celebrate. But how many people are conversant enough to the idea of actually making a film of the liberation movement, the way how you see, other films on independence, on liberation, because it's a spiritual thing, it's a cultural thing, it's an independence, it's a heritage, and that culture I think has not yet been there for people to say, hey, when can we have this movie, and how much does it take? I mean, I had a gentleman from Rwanda who actually sponsored the development, the script to it. You know, that's what made me meet Mickey, because I went to Hollywood and went to the office. I gave them the screenplay. They loved it. They said, like, you know, you got to get, you know, some of the people to rally behind it so that we can package it and develop it properly. But at the end of the day, it's still in the process for people locally to understand the impact, the economic, social, cultural, and political impact of all these things, because they have so many layers. And once we get that, then you'll still see relevant African stories coming from within with the help of internationals, rather than just having, say, like, you know, so if we make this film, how will it resonate locally and regionally? I mean, if you show like The Last King of Scotland in Uganda, I don't think that many people will laugh. So these are the kind of things that we have to make sure that if you make a story, you have to go, like, you know, you need to take people on the educational path and say, this is how it's done, so this is how, you know, it will be reflected, so that you find yourselves represented locally and internationally. At the end of the day, it's actually a human story, universally everywhere.
All right.
You know, oftentimes, I've had this experience in South Africa, and I've always made the statement to say that Africans hate their histories. I say so because in my country, government has not financed, or the people who were in exile have not written stories about the liberation. Right? The same thing applies in Rwanda. The Patriotic Front has come back. Many of them were in exile for years and years and decades. Has there been books written about their experiences outside?
Few books are.
Right? So you have this tradition of us not wanting to talk about history, right? And yet, we need them, we need those books. There's nothing as rich as a country which has literature that we can. Hollywood was given birth because of literature.
Literature is
the
where
Orson Welles and the Hitchcocks all took from literature to cinema. Now, unfortunately for us in Africa, our young people are having to write stories from scratch without assistance. If those books were there overflowing, then at least we can tap on them.
Yeah.
So
but mostly our stories were just told by word of mouth. And so
it doesn't help me today. Word of mouth must remain in history, but it's not helping me today.
It has
I want it
documented.
written.
You want it written?
I want it written.
Right.
You know why?
Yes.
Because my children to come in the next 300 years will have something to look at.
Right.
Oral, it's lost.
It is lost.
Thank you.
Perfect. Mickey, you'll be talking to us about where the money is in the film industry when we come back from the break. All right, we're going to take a very short break right about now. Keep it CNBC Africa, where we're fast in business worldwide. This is a CNBC Africa special. We are back after the break. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. Thank you so much for still being with us right here. This is a CNBC Africa special. Our focus is on the money in the audiovisual industry. And of course, we're having a very great conversation right here. We have Scott, we have Eric Kavera, and of course, Mickey is here with us, and Ramadan Suleiman. Of course, before we went for the break, it was a bit heated here, and of course we were talking a bit about the opportunities and all that. And Mickey, when I preempted that we will want you to just share with us where the money is, where the opportunities are, there's a reason behind this, because we've spoken about our own African cultures and how we discourage even our children when we're telling them the choices that they need to make in their careers. When someone tells you, I want to go in the arts, they're told, no, you need to be a doctor, you need to be a pilot, you need to be a physician. From your own experience, is there money here, man? And where and how? What are those opportunities in the film industry from your experience?
Well, I'm not exactly sure as far as in the elite group of Rwanda, but I find that at least in my circles, I'm able to find money within the elite group. So there's a lot of people that are, and that can form in a lot of different ways, from whether it's the government and just being able to pitch different ideas to different people. But the money, I mean, for me, it's come from so many different places. I've raised money from commercial real estate developers. I've raised money from people on Wall Street. I've raised money from people that just have a trust fund and they don't know what to do with their money. I mean, there's all different places that I've raised money from, but I'm not exactly sure where the infrastructure of the social economics of money is here. Maybe Eric can. He's more within the circles of people. Maybe he can help out.
Yeah, because why I ask is because here, I mean, the dynamics are different with all different contextual issues in each and every environment. We spoke earlier on how many film producers in Rwanda or in the region are able to just earn a living from that particular business. And this is probably what I want us to talk to. Where is the money? Where are the opportunities? And if the money is there, why is it difficult for people to get it? Yeah.
Let me, before you enter, Eric, I think first and foremost, a filmmaker is not a businessman or a businesswoman.
He should be looked at as a business person.
No, a filmmaker is someone that either writes the script or directs the film, right? One of those.
For free?
Once in a while.
No. Once in a while. But what I'm alluding to is the people who supposed to be our image in helping us speak to the rest of the world in raising the money are people who understand business. Whether they are economists, whether they are BCom accountants, they understand the packaging. They have the love for the arts. They have the love. They don't want to go behind the camera to talk about the technicalities. They just want to put in together a package, and they have the vocabulary to speak to bankers. They have the vocabulary to speak to economists. There's a synergy between them. You ask a filmmaker, what economic language does a filmmaker use? Nobody understands a filmmaker. Filmmaker doesn't make business sense, right? So what I'm saying is, in terms of African cinema, we need to look at things differently and not to repeat the last 50 years. You mentioned Sembeni, right? Now, if we do that, then we're trying to bring in. There's many economists out there. There's many BCom accountants and so forth. There's quite a few out there. Some of them I've discovered in Joburg who would say to me, you know what? Cinema was my first passion.
And now they are not.
And now they are not, but it's in some way.
Right.
And you then say, hey, come on, let's talk.
Yeah.
Right? So you try to find a way of bringing them back and let him or her be your entree into money.
So it's a value chain.
It's a value chain.
It's a value chain. Eric, talk to us a bit about this value chain and whether...
The value chain, I think my trick or like my language in Rwanda has actually been for me to make it exciting and fancy and glamorous. But of course, my entry point was also very difficult because I was actually dealing with a subject, historical subject, with, on the genocide against the Tutsis. So actually I managed to get few businessmen to come and rally behind the first feature film that was made. That was 100 Days. Again, unfortunately, these things don't necessarily make money. But I can tell you, it feels great once the screen, the projection is on there, and the credits roll, and you see your name in big title. No money can buy that.
Regardless of if you go back home on food, no food at all.
There is a certain amount of money.
Making a lot of money also feels really good.
Making a lot of money feels,
I'm sure.
It feels really good. But I'm talking about like galvanizing the support so that people can actually. Otherwise, if I had not actually, drummed up the, how great it is, we would not have gotten like the hundreds of people who are like trying to figure out, you lied to us. I mean, some of them is like, man, we're broke to the bones. But at the end of the day, there is money. It's just a matter of educating our elite to say, like, this thing is prestigious. Look, I'm on CNN, I'm on CNBC, I'm on Al Jazeera, I'm everywhere. Just come along with me. And some people find value to it because they say, like, I'm contributing into something.
Yeah.
Because I find it extremely offensive, extremely bothering. All the times, like, the last documentary of Eric Berra was supported by the Swedish embassy, the German embassy, the Norwegians. And then it became a little bit of a cliche, and it's not something that I would wish for my young men and women whom I've trained into my school to go into, because it's not sustainable. It's actually neo-colonization, whereby you
So
say,
when
like,
they're not there,
you
you're
tell-
not.
Yes,
you're not
but I
existing.
think that's why this audiovisual conference is very, very important, because the voices that were there spoke the same language, coming from different backgrounds and different places. So I think it's high time for us actually to have a voice to say, like, where will the money come from? From the telco, we pay, somebody said, like, we pay for parking, we pay for anything. We pay even when we go to the bathrooms. Somebody could be paying for the content. We all, like, feel happy when we have, like, some telenovelas and most of our broadcasters. It's really pathetic. So,
Right.
but it ought to change, and I think Rwanda is a very good stepping stone for that to happen, because we know exactly many decisions have been made into this complex and many things have changed. So I'm actually very contented. Money, I think, some people say, like, how much money do you need? Even if it's $1,000, then I'll have my editor to do, like, my documentary for a week. Then, you get transport, you get food, you get coffee, you get water. These are simple things that these young men and women need.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, it brings a lot of excitement just to make movies.
I think what's really cool, though, and exciting, and something to just, like, keep note of and know, is that the film industry, and by by Rwanda bringing the film industry here, and by building a film industry, if they do it correctly, with the enthusiasm that they have, there's no doubt in my mind that it could be one of the most thriving parts of the Rwanda government. It could be the most exciting part of the branch of government that they have. There's no doubt in my mind that certain cities like Atlanta in the United States and New Orleans and different, we're talking little cities, just little places, they've built the film industry through tax incentives, and they've curated those tax incentives to benefit themselves. They've now, their industries, Atlanta, that is their industry. The film industry is Atlanta.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
you identify them through that. Scott, I want to read your thoughts as well, picking up from what Mickey and Eric just said right there. How do we create a buy-in? Because Eric shares that frustration that he has of having external donors being the ones actually who are backing up some of these projects. What sort of models would make such initiatives like Eric's be sustainable? Because he's actually worried that this cannot be sustained.
No, I mean, the just getting money from outside, it is like the NGO model, really.
Yeah.
I think the people who are giving the money have all the best intentions and they want to help people here, and there's no desire to be neo-colonialists, but as long as you're only taking the money and not building something yourself and not telling your own stories the way you want to tell them, it isn't sustainable. And I've talked to a lot of people from Europe who give money to the thing, and they say, we want them to build their own things. We're happy to give the money. We see the talent, we see the opportunity, but those aren't our stories. That isn't our industry. You have to do it. We can't do it for you. And they don't really want to. But I think really, to take it back to sort of an emotional level, which is where he's coming from, is I think it has to start with a pride and a confidence in your own stories, in your own history, in your own people. That is what I saw there. As I say, I didn't know. And that I think. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of technical things that you have to do. There is the infrastructure. That's all. And that's a lot of detail and whatever. That's very important. But I think that sense of we as Rwandans, we know our history. Look what we've done. Look what we've done. Look what this country has done since the genocide. That's phenomenal. I mean, you've built a nation up from nothing, from devastation. That's phenomenal. That should be something that everyone should be proud of and want to say, yes, look what we can do. We can do anything. We're going to tell our stories. We're going to build a business, and we're going to carry it forward. And if you have that, then the details can be worked out. There'll probably be ups and downs and blah blah. But as long as you have that sense of pride and confidence, then you can go to anyone. You can go to Hollywood and say, yeah, come, we can do great stuff for you. It'll be a business deal because we're just as good as you are, and we can do it. You can teach us a few things, we'll teach you a few things, but we're strong, confident, and proud. I think that's where it has to start from.
For me to
Suleiman,
conclude,
yes.
I would say, you are not unique. Meaning you have a country, you are small, right, as a country. You have an asset here, and the asset is the people. The asset is the people. Nigerians coming here, they have a huge industry, and they come here and say, wow, look at this country. They are awed. You have achieved something.
Let's talk about then sustaining that, because having that plan is one thing, but then sustaining and keeping those gains going is another. What would be the most sustainable financing models? Because as Eric said, one of the panelists did mention that probably we need to tax. We should have a content tax rather, the way people are taxed to pay for security fees and stuff like that. We need some little money coming out of that mobile airtime you buy, going to sustain that content that you can. Is it sustainable?
Somebody mentioned something yesterday about, for example, you have the content, the telecoms. Telecoms are paying for, they are paying or not paying, I'm not sure, but you need to charge them for the use of the content, data, right? And you need to create this tax system, like in Tunisia, for example. Tunisia, because of them being an Islamic or Muslim country, alcohol is taboo. But what they are saying is they sell alcohol, but all the monies from alcohol pay for films, right? They have found a way of, in other words, sin pays for sin, equals sin, right? So it works for them. Rwanda needs to come up with these kinds of systems where you are able to create not too much, but a little incentive from charging, it could be 1% out of a tourism levy, as an example, but find mechanisms. For example, you have the gorillas here. Every tourist who comes here to come and visit the gorillas, whether you charge 2% or 5%, 1% comes to the film industry, the other goes to the conservation of the gorillas. Find something.
Often we've seen people backing out of such things. It creates a bad taste to a cross-section of people, and they now turn away from that and say, okay, we'll now consume the international films, which we cannot be able to be charged for that.
Can I tell you something?
Yes.
Why is it I don't have a problem in paying for the visa? If you go to the US, you pay for the visa.
Yes.
So why I come to Rwanda, I pay for the visa. So why can't you add $31 for the visa, and the $1 would go towards something? I don't know what you're doing with that money. It's as simple as that. It's you who decides. Don't tell me $10 goes towards the gorillas and the $10 goes towards paying for the customs. And no, I don't need to know that.
You don't need to know that. But Eric, some people say it's easier said than done. We had a few days ago that there would be an extra charge or a particular payment if you're playing local music in your shop. There was a form going around that you need to actually pay a certain amount, and DJs were almost saying that we will now play international music and not local music.
I think
you
have to
put this kind of.
I think you have to bring. I mean, this is it's show business, so
Yeah.
it has to come with a certain prestige, a certain class to it, a certain. Literally, I mean, that's why Hollywood is Hollywood, because it's like, I'll bring you a movie star. Man. I'm just sitting here with Mickey and saying, like, man, if you get a movie star, maybe I'll get some money here, I'll get some money in Hollywood, we'll make some fun film that people will be excited to watch. So I think at the end of the day, if you go like, you know what, this is a place where they play the music, the artists will come, and I'm getting some royalties, and then you boost them. You give them like the prestige and the pressure to go and create again. Because if you don't, then, you're just like, adding value, and it has to be a cross-border educational kind of sort of platform, that has to go continental, because we're not only talking about the self-projection images of Rwanda, but we're actually talking about the continent. Because if you go like on Brussels Airlines, what kind of images, I'm not only singling Brussels Airlines, all the airlines, any image about Africa, it is so negative that Mickey sitting here, you give him a call out of Los Angeles in Malibu where he is, you're like, Mickey, can you come to Africa next week? He's like, dude, with the thing that I saw in Ebola, and I'm going to be coming. And then it's like, is it safe? Is it? So once we change that, you go like, oh, Rwanda, so, oh my God, people are beautiful, are very friendly, they're dynamic and things like that. And you show that in a movie. If you show it in a documentary, in a news piece, it's not gonna fly. I mean, it's gonna be watched by the intellectuals like, the August Assembly here, and then that's all. Otherwise, if you put it like into a movie, I mean, that's what we're discussing. It's like, let's do like Love on Bike, pretty girl coming out of Beverly Hills, coming here and just like becoming a motor rider. How fun is that? I mean, people in LA will watch it, people in Atlanta will watch it.
Probably we already have a scoop of what probably is cooking.
I want those kind of stories to be seen so that I can discover Lagos, I can discover Accra, I can discover other places. Even on the continent, I don't know how other African countries look like. It's as sad as that. And I think it's a decision that can actually not be made by a filmmaker or somebody who's passionate about it, but it's a political decision that has to be made. It's like, how do we project our images to the rest of the world? I mean, in LA, they have got some really, really crazy places, from, South Central and other places, and, that are really bad. If they show you that, no one is going to go to LA. What they show you Beverly Hills, man. You go to the beach, you go to Malibu, you go to the promenade, Soho House, and all these cool.
So it's how we portray what we have in our continent.
And we don't do enough.
Right, we don't do enough. Mickey, what would be sustainable? What sort of advice would you be giving if someone has? Yes, would that bring the money? Would that make it a sustainable way of?
Yeah, I think just by having someone like me, a great representation of somebody who's out in Los Angeles, working at a very high level of filmmaking.
Yeah.
Inviting me to the conference, and just a little bit of me going back home and talking to friends and people. I work at a very high level. I'm not at the high studio level, but I'm at the top of the independent level, and I, just me coming back and saying, hey, I went to Rwanda and it was actually really cool and it was chill, and because there was a stigma. There was a stigma when I said I was coming here. I heard from a few different people. Yeah. Including my mom. Yeah. Call me when you get there. I sent the location, because there's this idea that I was going into something dangerous, right? Yeah. And I was like, no, I think it's cool. It's a friend of a friend. I met him in LA. He came to my thing, and I pitched that it was going to be fine. And personally, I live for danger, so I was ready for any kind of anything. Happens. But surprisingly, no danger, all positive, everything was great, and I think that is the start. That is the start, just having someone like me here to go back home and say, hey, it was great, work it out.
We're all talking. Yes. As well. Both our first time to Rwanda, and Bidoke, he's South African, he knows a lot about Africa, but he says as well, same like me, utterly surprised because we realized we knew nothing. We knew really nothing about this country, and everything has been, we've been positively surprised.
Eric must have done a very bad job.
He did, but what I think is also, because you're talking about the whole business models and so forth, I don't think Rwanda or any country in Africa should be scared of enforcing laws of saying this is how we want to do things, to talking to a Google or these big telecom companies and so on, because the government has power here, the people have power here. They can say, no, this is how we want to organize our business. We are an audience here, we're a business here, you want our money, you have to play by our rules. It doesn't have to be heavy-handed, it can be beneficial for everyone. Something like this small little tax that goes into it, that helps an industry because it builds it up and everybody benefits off of that. I don't think people should be scared at all. It's happened before, many other countries have done it, there are many places you can look to, some in Africa, a lot around the world, and pick some of the best models, see what works for us, what can we do that's truly Rwandan, and then start to tell our stories the way we want to tell them.
Right. Scott, if I want to just now take the last comments. If you have another party shot you want to throw, I'll give you a chance to do that, or I'll take that as your closing remark.
As last thing, as I say, for me, I was so inspired coming here by the country, by the people I met. Go for it. I mean, you've got the stories. you've got the talent. Probably need some infrastructures. You need some organization things. You need a plan.
Yeah.
Get that sorted, and then really the sky's the limit.
The sky's the limit. Eric, as we close, there's a lot of high, hype going on at the African Union level when the reforms are being done right now. I want to know, because some people are saying it's either now or never. This is that chance. If you want the African image to be actually portrayed the way it should be, this is the time to actually petition the African leaders as they do these reforms, incorporate film, because this is the image. This is that platform you can use to sell the image of Africa. I want to know how your voice, as the people in the creatives, is actually getting into these reforms that are going on right now. Probably what you can tell them if they're not hearing you on that particular table.
I hope they're hearing me. If they're not, I will just replay the video if I ever get it and just send it to, on my social media through my friends. But the bottom line is, I want to come back here next year with a film. You can talk about film, you can complain, you can do things, but things have to be done. I want to make films. I want all the young filmmakers to make films so that actually we can project the image we want. The last thing I really hate is actually where is my next funding? Only if next funding coming from has to come from Stockholm, from Berlin, and from Paris. I mean, for the last 50 years, African cinema has been sort of especially the West African part, been funded by the French taxpayers' money, and at the end of the day, it moved things, but it did not move them enough. So, and that's what I tried to say within the framework of the conference. So, let's have a resolution. Let's have a statement that actually can be taken to our head of state here, who has the power to take it to all the other heads of state, because the African image is a big issue from film and television and all across board, and Africans are not done. We have a lot of things that we can sell to the rest of the world. Even just being the creator of mankind, that in itself, we don't say it enough. And if you say it, and then say, I'd like to make that stories. I'm sure Mickey is I could make this story, I could make these stories, but it needs to be encouraged. It's if you come here, you get incentives, you're going to be welcome, you're going to have a human and mankind kind of story that will be coming out of Africa. So that we go, everybody now is claiming, Black Panther is Wakanda. It's in Rwanda. Somebody says it's in Kenya. It's in South Africa. It's in Moses. So that pride is where do we get the benefits? Can we actually get our benefits as well? So if it's Forrest who wants to make his next film, so you can come and make it here. It's gonna be it's not gonna be $100 million, but it could be maybe $2 million, and then you can have a conversation. And these people want to do things. They really want to engage. From Steven Spielberg to Forrest to all these people in LA who have really at the creme de la creme level of the film industry. They care. They care. They just need people. Hadn't I gone to LA to see Mickey doing his stuff because he has a training center where people come and really gets energized, as you saw on stage with the kind of energy he has. I was going I have the same thing back home, but my guys don't really don't get energized. So we need people to start engaging and interacting. At an equal foot.
Engaging and interacting. Key point, Mickey. If someone, because we rarely have a chance to sit with people like you who have actually been on these big stages, if you have any word that you just leave us with for the sake of those young people who are budding, filmmakers, actors, actresses, and they want to make it as a business, because I know Suleiman will argue and say, no, it's not a business for some of these people that I just mentioned. But those who want to do it in that sense, what sort of message would you be leaving them with?
Well, I'm going to say directly to the people of Africa, right there, have confidence in yourself and your work. I'm somebody who, I didn't go to college for filmmaking. Secrets out. I, for the most part, didn't even know what I was going to talk about today on stage. And the truth of the matter is I've learned in my career as an actor, as a filmmaker, as a producer, as someone raising finance, as someone even putting in finance, I always thought and had the confidence that it's going to work. And I carry that with myself, and I tell that to people, that this is going to work. And so for all bull aside, always remember to have confidence and to strive forward in a positive attitude, to prosper in the film industry, Hollywood was built on people that didn't know what they were doing, who pretended they knew what they were doing until they knew what they were doing, and then finally
Fake it till you make it.
made it. Exactly. So that's my message to Africa and to all the filmmakers out there and all the young people, to always have hope, always know that you can do it, and to never it's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward.
Right. Ramadan, you have the last word. We've spoken.
Last word.
Which way forward? Where do we go
For
from here?
me, leave the AU out of it, concentrate on Rwanda, and the president has done well in bringing together the 6 countries. He's achieved it. Build on that. And lastly, for the past 24 years, you have stability in this country, built on that stability. And at the end of the day, when Hollywood wants to come here, they are interested in stability. They don't want to hear that there was a coup, somebody was, no. You have done it for 24 years. It's stable, security-wise, it's perfect, and that's what we want. And built on your economy. You are no different as a small country to Belgium. Belgium, what do Belgians produce? Charcoal. Once upon a time, or beer. Right? So what I'm trying to allude here is you are no different to them.
Yeah.
So you go and see what is it they are doing as a small country in Europe. They are forced to reckon with. You get those secrets and copy.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, gentlemen. It was a manel, not a panel. Unfortunately, we didn't have the ladies here. But of course, it's a conversation that continues. This is just a first of many more of the series of this kind of conversations. Thank you so much for making time and being with us. And of course, for those who have been watching us, thank you. The interesting bit is that we have spoken about the problems, but interestingly, we also have actually tackled the solutions, which we actually have them. They are called homegrown solutions. I want to say thank you for watching. Always talk to us at CNBC Africa or tweet me directly at Eugene Anangwe. On behalf of the teams, we want to say thank you for watching. Goodbye for now.